Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Randana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhagavad-gita Ashtotar to the Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON, BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhagavad-gita Ashtotar to the Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. So when it gets a little warmer in here, you can turn the heat off? Okay. All right, maybe another 10 minutes or so. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, 1 second. Okay. On this 15th day of April, 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 6, entitled Dhyāna-yoga. The Yoga of Meditation, text number 36 on page 289. Right? Okay. I think so too. All right. Asangyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me matihi vashyatmana tuyatata shakyo vaptum upayataha. Okay. Asangyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me matihi vashyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptum upayataha. Asangyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me matihi vashyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptum upayataha. Asangyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me matihi vashyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptum upayataha. Asangyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me matihi vashyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptum upayataha. Asangyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me matihi vashyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptum upayataha. Not yet? Try it. Asangyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me matihi vashyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptam upayataha. Not bad. Word by word. Oh, but before we begin, I have a request. If you would move your chair over in front of that door, which will not open because it doesn't open, and you will move your chair over there, that will be more proper division. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Oh, and don't put that on the where people sit. Yeah, you can just give it to him because we're through with it now. Yours will stay where you don't need it. That's good. All right. All right. Word by words. Asangyata, unbridled. Atmana, by the mind. Yogaha, self-realization. Dushprapa, difficult to obtain. Iti, thus, me, my, matihi, opinion, vasya, controlled. Atmana, by the mind. Tu, but. Yatata, while endeavoring. Shakyaha, practical. Avaptum, to achieve. Upayataha, by appropriate means. No, I can't believe it. The great Bhragupati is here. He's like the top book this reader in the world. I thought, wait a minute, that can't be Bhragupati. There he is. Haribo. All right, we're on page 289. Oh, you got it ready? Okay. Yes, thank you. Okay. Translation.
For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment to detach the mind from material engagement can hardly achieve success in self-realization. Hare Krishna. Self-realization. Where was I? Okay. Trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. Yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. Such a show of yoga may be materially lucrative, but it is useless as far as spiritual realization is concerned. Therefore, one must control the mind by engaging it constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Unless one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. A Krishna-conscious person easily achieves the result of yoga practice without separate endeavor. But a yoga practitioner cannot achieve success without becoming Krishna-conscious. Om jnana timarandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmidatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. Do you have the right page? Okay. Okay, so we are approaching the end of chapter 6. Now in chapter 6, this is about Dhyāna-yoga, the Ashtanga-yoga process, as pretty much according to Patanjali Muni. And Krishna has given a nice description of the process and also the goal. In text 21 to 20, or 20 to 21, he describes samadhi, the situation of samadhi. And it sounds pretty attractive. When one's mind is completely fixed on the self, capital S self, in the heart, it's Huvasol, then he experiences boundless happiness. It's experienced through pure senses. And he thinks there is no greater gain that can be to this. And he's completely free of material miseries. So this is the criteria ultimately, because when you boil it down, whether we're material or spiritual, we're looking for happiness, we're looking for pleasure. And we're looking to diminish displeasure and pain as much as possible. Maximize the pleasure, minimize the pain. That's in not just human beings, but all species. So in those couple of verses, let's just review them. We have our books here, text 20 to 21, I believe. 20 to 23. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restricted from material mental activities by the practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the cap self, supersoul, by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Now that sounds like something you would want to try to strive for. If you can come to the point of boundless transcendental happiness, and you're not shaken even in the greatest difficulty. But the problem is, it's very difficult. The way Krishna just gives a little outline here, but it's based on going alone, you know, finding a very quiet spot, a sanctified spot, sitting in a certain way, drilling the respiration, withdrawing the senses from the sense objects, and gradually, you know, focusing the mind, concentration and meditation, and finally samadhi. So it's pretty clear, before we get to Arjun's declaration of inability, that this is not for masses of Kali Yugites, right? That's the point. Prabhupada makes that point throughout the chapter. But the final goal, absorption in thought of the Supreme and complete detachment from matter and material attraction, is the same thing that we're looking for. But the process that has been given to us, especially by Lord Chaitanya, for controlling the mind and fixing it on Krishna, the all-attractive Lord, and experiencing this higher taste, which will decrease the lower taste. In other words, the vairagya will come automatically as you practice bhakti yoga, as we learn in the second chapter of first canto, where Sutta Goswami is describing the ultimate dharma to the sages at Naimisharanya, right near the beginning of Bhagavatam. And one of the verses there, after the first verse of what real dharma is, which is unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service, is Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayat Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayadahoitukam. By practicing devotional service to Krishna, according to Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu, as we've been given, one quickly, Ashu, develops detachment and knowledge. Vairagya and Vidya. Vairagya, detachment, and Jnana, knowledge. And those two are essential concomitants of all forms of yoga, including Bhakti Yoga. We have this famous verse written by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya about Lord Chaitanya, glorifying him. As soon as he read it, he ripped it up. It was on one of these palm leaves, because it glorified him as Krishna, appearing as Lord Chaitanya. He didn't like that, you know. But Govinda, his servant, very wisely drew it on the outside of where Lord Chaitanya was staying. You know, he was staying in this Gambhira. Did you ever see that? Did you go there? No. Well, the verse isn't still there, but yeah, I was fortunate enough to go to Jagannath Puri one time, and I visited that very small little kutir, you know. Lord Chaitanya stayed there. So here's this verse: Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshartam Ekak Purushak Purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharir Dhari Kripambudeyas Tamaham Papadye. Very nice verse, very famous verse. So he's saying there that the same ancient person, Krishna, has now come in the form of Lord Chaitanya to teach devotion to himself, characterized by vairagya and vidya, detachment and knowledge. Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshartam, for the sake of teaching. His name is Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sharir Dhari. He's an ocean of mercy, and I take full shelter of him. A very famous verse. But these two wealth, if you will, the wealth of the yogis is vairagya and vidya, detachment from the material and attachment to the spiritual. They go together. Just like we, about the higher taste, right? We took that for the book, get the higher taste. So it's not just the higher taste for prasadam, which you can, get, but also the higher taste for thinking of, glorifying, serving Krishna. And proportionately, the lower taste goes away. The natural detachment comes. But as Arjuna expressed already, he doesn't think he can do it. It's Chanchalami Mana Krishna. Because if you're just working directly with the mind, you can imagine, your mind is filled with all of these thoughts of enjoyment, and really wanting to avoid any pain. And you've got to draw it away from that and fix it on the Supreme. But you're just there all alone, and you're basically there with your mind, and your mind is very powerful. Arjuna said it's like a hurricane. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, pramati balavadram. Pramati means very disturbing and very powerful. And chanchala, you're going here and there. We can experience that, Is that if you're not trying to chant Hare Krishna, you're just sort of sitting and spacing out. Your mind will go here, go there, a million different things. So in any yoga process, the control of the mind is key. So we've had karma yoga, we've had some jnana yoga, now we've got this Dhyāna-yoga, but ultimately bhakti yoga is the answer, and that will come in the next chapter. The middle 6 chapters, Prabhupada pointed, those are the most essential chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. So Arjuna pled inability, that the mind is too powerful, and I'm not suited for this. He's after all a Kshatriya, active in so many things, and just say, all right, go off to the to the forest. But ultimately, Krishna wants Arjuna to fight. That's his yoga, to think of Krishna and fight. To do your duty, whatever it may be, but think of Krishna, that this is being done for Krishna. So here, Krishna agrees, right? he begins in Asangsya. He says, for sure, you're right, Arjuna, Omadiyam Kunti. This is 35. It is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. And then he says, but for one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That's my opinion. So the key there is appropriate means. It has to be appropriate for us, if we're going to do it. We want the goal, the final goal of yoga, which is detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna, and to be entering into this flow of bliss. Like how many times we have, even in last chapter, we had this idea of unbroken happiness. One of my two favorite verses in the Gita, 5:20 and 21, I believe. And one is, Yehi sang sparjaja boga dukkha yonaya evate ajantabantam kote anateshu ramate buddha. This is text number 22. I'm sorry, 21 and 22. So we've had a revision of this translation here. Text 22, 522. An intelligent person does not take part in the pleasures that are due to contact of the senses with the sense objects. O son of Kunti, such pleasures are the sources of all misery and have a beginning and an end. And so the wise do not take delight in them. Very simple. Okay, so if I'm not going to get my pleasure from the senses, then where am I going to get it? Previous verse. Text 21. Bhayasparshesh swasaktatma vindatyatmana yat sukham. Sab brahma yoga yuttatman sukham akshayam ashnute. That last phrase is all important. Sukham akshayam ashnute. Enjoying unbroken happiness. You cannot find that in sensual happiness. The senses they have a beginning and an end. We've had experience. Anything you enjoy, great, look at this meal, this is just what I've been hoping for. After a certain point, no more. I can't take one more bite, right? Beginning and an end. The senses are always limited. Always. But our desire to enjoy is unlimited because we're part and parcel of Krishna. So where can we find that? So this verse, a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasures, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme. Now the Supreme is general, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here is it Brahma, Brahma Yoga Yuktatma. Now what is Brahma? Brahma is spirit. This is the ultimate Brahman. This is the Supreme Brahman, Krishna. So that's the way you can enjoy unbroken happiness, ever-expanding happiness. Otherwise, what's the meaning of that first verse of the Shikshashtaka? This chanting of congregational chanting, which is, after all, the most practical means in this age to concentrate on the Supreme, to become completely absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate Brahman, the ultimate object of meditation. Not by sitting quietly and wrestling with the mind, but by jumping wildly and dancing and playing a musical instrument, clapping your hand, and in this way using all of these ways of fixing the mind. You're not even fixing the mind, you're just hearing. You just have your ears open, right? So that's practical for the Kali Yuga. That is the way, but the ultimate goal is the same. And it's very quickly, because Krishna is helping you. This is the big thing. He's not going to help these yogis, who mostly are after siddhis and all these different things. It's just very few can achieve something, but oftentimes it's mukti that they're after, or some siddhis. Lord Chaitanya has this verse, a teaching to Sanatana Goswami. Who is really peaceful? Because that's something you really want to have your mind with equilibrium, even in the greatest difficulty, to stay calm. We were reading about Prahlada in the morning. He's a perfect example. So, what does Lord Chaitanya say? Jeto dharpana marjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam. So right away, the first line, he's talking about getting free from the fire of material life, birth and death, by the process of polishing the mirror of the heart through congregational chanting of the holy name. You see? And that, in other words, you get liberation even in the first line. And then it goes on. Cheto davanam bhava mahadavagni shreya kaidava chandrika vatadanam vidyavadu jivanam. So it's just like the moonshine, the Benedictine moon, Prabhupada's beautiful translation, this congregational chanting. which causes the white lotus of good fortune to blossom in your heart, and also because it's a public activity, and whoever is involved in it, widely. And is the life of transcendental knowledge. The knowledge is already there. It's buried. Eons and eons of births in all these different species, we can't access it, but it's still there. And so this purification of the heart, by the chanting, the knowledge comes out. Or in a way that it often comes out is that you become really interested in getting the knowledge. You become interested in this Bhagavad Gita because you've experienced something in the chanting. Krishna is encouraging you from within. And so that's happening. So then, Anandam Buddhivardhanam. Right away, you're just on the third line of the first verse, and he's talking about the ocean of bliss expanding unlimitedly, overflowing. Yeah, that's what I want. Let me dive into that ocean of bliss. And then, even if you're not in the ocean, every step, you may be on dry land. Pratibadam purnamitasvadanam. You're drinking nectar at every step. As long as you're still absorbed in hearing and chanting the holy name and serving Krishna, you can be very blissful. So this is the critical difference in material and spiritual pleasure. Material pleasure is based on the limited ability of your senses to contact something pleasurable. But you can't stay in that contact for very long. This is a tragedy. And so it's intermittent and the source of misery because those desires are ever increasing. Krishna said in the 3rd chapter, this is lust. Never satisfied, burns like fire. You die with those unfulfilled desires, brings you to another body. If you've been very sinful, probably a subhuman body, and then from there you go on, This is what we've been doing for ages. But if you can contact that reservoir of pleasure in the heart, which is ever unlimited, meaning Krishna Bhakti, then you can become completely indifferent to the pleasures of the senses. Look at the 6 Goswamis. What an incredible example. You had 3 of them who were incredibly wealthy. Sanatana, Rupa, and Raghunath Das, right? And they were like billionaires. Sanatana and Rupa, unlimited. Well, after they met Lord Chaitanya and they committed, to following him in bhakti, Tyaktvat Turnam Ashesha Manda Lapati Shading Sada Tuchavat. I know you know all these, right? Really? He's always studying these 6 Goswamis on, which is inspiring him to go and give books. It's a wonderful example. So this verse is I think, my favorite of the 8. So Tyaktvat Turnam means quickly. It didn't like say, should I or shouldn't I? Should I or shouldn't I? No, it was like, boom, give it all up, right? As soon as possible. So Rupa cashed out. He was the finance minister. They had a whole boatload of gold. You know what that would be worth today? Billions and billions of dollars. Billions. So he gave half of it to the Brahmins and Vaishnavas for charity. He gave a quarter of it for the family because probably they expect something. That causes a lot of trouble if they get it. And a quarter of it he saved for emergencies. And that quarter was used to bribe the jailer of his brother, the Qazi, not the Qazi, the Nawab. He arrested Sanatan because he was the prime minister, his right-hand man. It was like, you can't quit, So he's in jail, but he praised him. Oh, you're a very, very pious Muslim, and me too. I want to go to Mecca, So take these 5,000 gold coins and take me. Oh, I don't know. What happened when the Nawab comes and you're not here? I'll be in a lot of trouble. No problem. You tell him I went to take care of my body in the Ganges, and I fell in and I washed away. My body's gone. And here's 10,000 coins. Forget the 5,000. All right, I think it's a good deal. So he let him out, and then he was blissful, and he started walking. It's a whole beautiful account of how he gave up the last shred of attachment on his way to Benares to meet Lord Chaitanya. So here you have these, very influential, wealthy. They were Vaishnavas, but they had been dragooned to work in the government of the Nawab. So they had lost their status in the Hindu, the Brahminical community. So, but then they gave it up, and from that status they became as renounced as you could be practically. Of course, Raghunath Das was even, he was the real epitome of it, and he was also very wealthy. But they, all three of them, all six of them really, they would wander in Vrindavan forest, you know. Not even, it's not like, oh, this is my tree, you know, this is where I live. No, they had different tree every night. They hardly ate anything. They begged from different houses, a little of this, a little of that. Wore you know, little loincloths and everything, simple clothes. But the third line says, Gopi bhavadasam matam lahadi kallola magno mahur. They had the greatest wealth. They gave up the material wealth and they got real wealth, which is swimming in the ocean of nectar of the gopis' love for Krishna. This is what they were meditating on. And writing books like the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu for the benefit of us, you know, for neophytes, not just writing, you know, beautiful poetry about Radha and Krishna, which they also did, but also how to, you know, the nectar of instruction. And Sanatana Goswami with his Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that was the first book written. So they're writing the books, and they would attract, you know, wealthy, pious Vaishnavas, and they would say, okay, you want to give me something? I don't need anything from you, but you build a temple. And so in this way, these great temples were built. First the Madan Mohan temple with Sanatana Goswami, and Rupert with the Govindaji temple and the others. So this is where they led ideal lives. And even though they had practically nothing materially, they were the most wealthy, because at every moment they're drinking the spiritual pleasure, which is unlimited and which doesn't end. That's what we're looking for. So back to our present verse. So Arjuna is doubtful he can do it. And Krishna says, yes, it could be done with practice, the restless mind. It's 35. And then he said, but you're right, those whose mind is unbridled, self-realization, difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. So Krishna is kind of still pushing, you know, this Dhyāna-yoga at this point, and saying, you just have to strive by appropriate means and that'll be fine. But Prabhupada makes it very clear in this little purport here that the only way practical to control the mind in this age is through Krishna consciousness. And so that'll be the theme now in the future purport, verses and purports. Because Arjuna will still, you know, protest. I don't think so. And if I fail, I'll be like a riven cloud. I gave up my family and my military career and went to the forest, but I couldn't control the mind. Now I've got nothing, you know. So it's there's a little argument, and then finally it will all be resolved on the last verse when Krishna says, "Okay, don't worry. Those are the best yogis, are those who are always thinking with me within the heart, wish me with great and transcendental faith. In other words, my bhaktas." And so Arjuna, you can almost hear the sigh of relief, you know, coming from the page. Oh, that's me. Krishna is my friend. I'm always thinking of Krishna. So, and then the next verse, the beginning of the 7th chapter, Krishna will give us practical means of how we can fix the mind on Krishna, even in our daily life. Do you ever drink any water? That's my energy. Think of me when you drink water. When you see the sun, do you ever see the sun and the moon? Yes? That's me. So whatever we see, whatever we experience, taste of water, the smell of the fragrance of flower, we should be reminded of Krishna, because it's all his energy, the 7th chapter. So then it really gets down to the bhakti, and the 9th chapter is the most confidential knowledge. Okay, any question or discussion on these points? Otherwise we'll go forward. Arjuna is continuing to doubt and object, and then it will all be resolved. Very important instructions. We can go on? Yes, Bhagavati Prabhu. Do you want to send him a chair, by the way? You're fine. You okay? Yeah, but use the mic, because we have an audience here, YouTube audience.
Yeah, it seems like some people are able to execute devotional service on a much higher level than others. I mean, you mentioned about Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami. I mean, I thought 51 years ago when I first joined, okay, give me 20, 30 years, I'll be able to do like that. But I'm just kind of something nowhere near that, and something pretty close to where I started off. I mean, how do we understand how it is that some people are able to perform devotional service in, you know, just such a elevated way?
Well, it helps if you're having the personal association of Lord Chaitanya. That's for sure. But even today, you know, I mean, some of Prabhupada's godbrothers, I'm thinking of, you know, Prabhupada himself, of course, Bhaktisiddhanta. But there was a book that was written about Krishna's Babaji. I forget what it's called. I have it on my shelf. I have yet to read it. I met him one time. I don't know if you ever met him. But it was 1977. And you weren't in LA at that time, were you?
No.
You had left by that time. And so anyway, you know, we kept hearing these things. Devotees would come back from India and say, yeah, Prabhupada wants the devotees to go there. You know, they didn't tell us that he wanted all the devotees to go there. But so I kept bugging Ramaswamy, please send me in Mandaleshwar. You remember Mandaleshwar? He was an editor of the BTG also, very close to Satsvarup Maharaj. So Rama said, well, no, you got to finish the self-realization book first, the Science of Self-Realization. I was writing captions, you know. So I did that finally, and it was just a few days before, it was like the 12th, maybe the 12th or the 11th of November. So we get on a flight, and we're going on the eastern flight to London, and then from there to Delhi. You know. So in the air, we learn that there's been a bomb threat for the plane. You know, someone has said we placed a bomb on the plane. So we didn't land in Heathrow. We landed in Shannon Airport in Ireland, in case there was really a bomb that blow up. You know. So we all get off the plane. They spent hours. I mean, it was. I think they put us up in a hotel. I think 24 hours searching that plane. They didn't find a bomb. But we had missed our connection in Heathrow, you know, so we got there late. We got, I think, on the 16th of November, we landed in Bombay, and one of the devotees from the temple couldn't even speak to us. He showed us a telegram Prabhupada had left on the 14th. So, it's quite a shock. So we made our way to Vrindavan. We were there for the ceremony, this big ceremony. They invited everybody in Vrindavan to come and take the feast, you know, the people everywhere. It was a big meeting. And so I was working for Back to Godhead at the time. And so I had not only the mission to go and see Prabhupada, but also to go to see Sridhar Swami, Sridhar Maharaj, Prabhupada's godbrother, who we had heard had evidence that Prabhupada was the Shakti Vesha avatar. Now that was a perspective, real news story for the BTG, right? So we went to Mayapur, and we participated in the Pushpa Samadhi, you know, putting the flowers that were on Prabhupada's body where the big Samadhi went up, where you see it now. So that was there, and then I crossed the river and I went to Sridhar Maharaj's mat. I was the first ISKCON devotee to visit him after Prabhupada disappeared. It was 2 days after. But I wasn't going to, you know, take instruction from him, but to find out what evidence he had that Prabhupada was a Shakti Vesha avatar. So when I walked in the gate, there was Krishna's Babaji, which is pretty miraculous anyway, because he'd been up there with Prabhupada in Vrindavan just a few days before, and now he's back here. He doesn't take any trains or anything, you know. And we heard that he had the mystic power of getting in the river and then coming up, down, you know, getting in the Yamuna and coming up in the Ganges in the Mayapur. This is the mystic power of yogis. Anyway, he was there, and he was, you know, he was happy to see me, and so in those days, you know, I was such a fool. I'd been like 3 years in the movement, and I knew a few shlokas. Said, would you like to hear a nice shloka? So he laughed, and I chanted something, I forget which one, from the Karnamrita, Krishna Karnamrita. So he's from, oh, just see what Swami Maharaj has done, you know, the legends and Yavanas are chanting the slokas. So something like that, and he said, he told me you should learn all the verses. There's about 112 of the Krishna Karnamrita. Which I recently decided, you know, I said, I should probably do that. You know, he gave me that instruction. Anyway, so he was famous, you know, for being very close to Prabhupada. When he probably went back in '67 to recuperate, he saw him again, and they had some, you know, wonderful meetings. And he was famous for just being, for chanting, doing chanting all the time, and leading one of these wonderful bhajans. There's also some recordings of his kirtans, you know. But now, I tell you that story, but I completely forgot why I was going to tell you that story.
Well, I was asking about, like, how is it that some people are able to perform devotional service? It seems like such a higher level.
Oh, right. Yeah, right. So, you know, it's, I mean, the thing is, can we really shed, you know, all of the things that we did, you know, on our influences before we joined the Krishna consciousness? I mean, we can go through great transformation, But there's certain practices, there's certain habits of mind and thought and emotions that I think we still have. And that, I think, is true. You very rarely find someone who's born and raised in the West becoming, so renounced, like the, like the six Goswamis, and be able to sustain that. We learn, when Prabhupada was on the planet, we drew so much spiritual strength from his presence. And then, when he left, and we had the zonal gurus and everything, and it was a huge shock that these devotees who had done so much incredible service for Prabhupada, and some of them just couldn't handle it. And what couldn't they handle? The adulation, the worship of themselves, which really was improper, was too much. So suddenly, we realized, it's not that easy to become very, very advanced. They had been given so much responsibility, but they weren't able to make the transition, to keep the vairagya and the austerity together, even when Prabhupada wasn't around. So I think it's just part of the conditioning. When you ask any the pediatrician, people who are used to dealing with children, what you learn in the first 5 years is indelible. Your brain is a certain condition. How you deal with that. And so I think that's the reason why it's difficult for us to really become that advanced, that renounced. So exceptions. I mean, someone like Radhanath Swami, who really did this. He really went to the Himalayas. He really was able to meditate. And I don't know if you know this. I don't know if everyone knows this. He was a champion wrestler in high school before he ever got into yoga. And that requires a lot of willpower, and strength and things like that. And that's what he did. He had mental strength, as well. And he was able to undergo that. And so there's a few exceptions like that who are able to, to this day, I bet you he still sleeps on the floor. He didn't have to sleep on the floor. I don't sleep on the floor anymore. Maybe you do. But I started out that way, but you get all your bones, it's like, but he's still doing it. And so he has there's a few that have that kind of willpower. And you can see how influential he can become, staying strict and austerity renounced. And so many people have taken shelter. His disciples, I had the great fortune in 2005 to visit Chaupati. I think it was my only visit there. And we were on our way to Mayapur. And it was the year that there was a reprise, if you will, of the first Bombay Pandal. Shyama Sundar was there, staying with him, and he convinced Radhanath Swami to sponsor it in the same place. I forget the name of it. So we stayed there for that. There was a bunch of us, Prabhupada disciples there. And so they assigned 2 brahmacharis to each of us to take care of us. Do the laundry and stuff like that. So I asked each one of them, the 2 fellows who were the very nice devotees, he said, one of them was an engineer, another one had been a doctor, this is the kind of people who Maharaj was able to attract, and is able to attract. So it's rare, but it happens that even amongst our contemporary Westerners that we can show that kind of determination and austerity to really rise up to a high level of Krishna consciousness. But the wonderful thing is that even without that, you can still be very strict and very together and do so much significant service because the process is so powerful. If you really surrender to it, the chanting and the hearing and especially the cold showers in the winter.
So is it correct to think of him as like somebody who's advanced from a past lifetime and is just...
Oh, Radhanath Maharaj?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. It seems like, but Prabhupada said, all of you have been sent by my Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta. So I don't know. I just saw, the way I joined, it was, I could see Krishna's hand, and actually the best thing that happened to me, I got a serious case of hepatitis, which just laid me up, and I was just, my whole life was like, oh, what have I got? Nothing, So when I came out, I said, okay, I've got to get some way of getting my health back first. Yoga, Amala Bhakta's ashram. And So that was really my first exposure to Eastern, stuff. But it just went on from there, and there's so many ways in which I saw Krishna guided me down to the temple, And if I had joined anywhere else, I would have never been part of the press. I didn't have any great degree in English. They wouldn't have sent me to New York. But I was there, and I said to Radha Ballava, the manager, this Krishna book has got a lot of little mistakes in it. So really, here's a red pen. They didn't give me a desk, didn't give me any time to do it. Just see what you can find, in your spare time. So after a month, I was through reading it. I marked it up. Said, "Oh, very good. And it should be part of the press." So then it was a tug of war. But of course, Bali, he was in charge of the temple and also the press. So he eventually said, "You do press work," and that's how I started my career, proofreading the third canto, Hiranyaksha and Varaha.
What was your service up before that?
I was the incense. You remember the incense factory, Jidaswar? I was filling little bottles with the oil, in the morning, in the afternoon, Harinam, That went on for a few months. But then, if I had been in Kansas City, no one would have even known about, the fact that I had some English background, Who knows what I would have been. I'd probably ended up being a book distributor. Although that was pretty hard for me. All right, so we can do one more verse. Let's see, which one are we on now? 37, right? Yeah. All right. Arjuna Vacha. Ayati Shraddhayopeto. Yoga Chalitamanasaha. Aprapya Yoga Sangsiddhim. Kamgatim Krishna Gacchati. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism?" Purport. The path of self-realization or mysticism is described in the Bhagavad Gita. The basic principle of self-realization is knowledge that the living entity is not this material body, but that he is different from it, and that his happiness is in eternal life, bliss and knowledge. These are transcendental beyond both body and mind. Self-realization is sought by the path of knowledge, by the practice of the Eightfold System, or by Bhakti Yoga. In each of these processes, one has to realize the constitutional position of the living entity, his relationship with God, and the activities whereby he can reestablish the lost link and achieve the highest perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. Following any of the above-mentioned three methods, one is sure to reach the supreme goal sooner or later. This was asserted by the Lord in the second chapter. Even a little endeavor on the transcendental path offers a great hope for deliverance. Out of these three methods, the path of Bhakti Yoga is especially suitable for this age because it is the most direct method of God realization. To be doubly assured, Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna to confirm his former statement. One may sincerely accept the path of self-realization, but the process of cultivation of knowledge and the practice of the Eightfold Yoga system are generally very difficult for this age. Therefore, despite constant endeavor, one may fail for many reasons. First of all, one may not be sufficiently serious about following the process. To pursue the transcendental path is more or less to declare war on the illusory energy. Consequently, whenever a person tries to escape the clutches of the illusory energy, she tries to defeat the practitioner by various allurements. A conditioned soul is already allured by the modes of material energy, and there is every chance of being allured again, even while performing transcendental disciplines. This is called yoga chalita manasa, deviation from the transcendental path. Arjuna is inquisitive to know the results of deviation from the path of self-realization. So we have, the similar warnings, if you will, in our path. We have a book called The Nectar of Instruction, and beginning of the second verse, Rupa Goswami is warning us against ways in which you can impede or even destroy your bhakti. Atyahara, priyasascha, pajalpo, niyamagraha, janasangascha lauyangcha, shadbi bhakti pranashyati. Nashyati means destroyed. Pranashyati means totally obliterated. The pra is an intensifier. So what are these? They're actually 8, because 2 of them expand into 2 things. Atyahara. It's interesting, the order. The first thing, overeating or over-collecting material things. Both of those can be destructive of your. We learn, in the ashram, the brahmachari ashram, you join, and so, hey, no illicit sex, not even a hint of it, All right, well, that's pretty, you come out of Western culture, that's something. All right, well, that's number 1, right? And then, illicit sex, no intoxication, that's also a big, big attraction. Luckily, I was kind of free of those before I joined, so that helped. But, meat eating, okay, that's the easiest one, because you got all this wonderful prasadam, right? And gambling. Gambling is a piece of cake, right? But most people, we have one fellow here, I won't name any names, but he was totally into gambling. couldn't stop it. So anyway, but usually what happens, it happens with me, is that, you're dealing with all these things, you have all this service that you're doing, you just finished the pots, and all this thing, you say Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And then comes the Sunday feast. And, we're living in a house where all of the fragrances, are coming up, they're filling the house. And it's coming, when is it coming? And so the Sunday feast comes, you're serving out, to everybody and everything. So then it's your turn to honor the Sunday feast. The first time I went to the temple, I wasn't, I was curious what's going on with the friend. So it was a Sunday night. First was and I was used to meditating on Om and things like that. And so the deities themselves was like a mind blower, all of the opulence and the colors and all of that stuff. And the loud chanting, all right, I knew the Hare Krishna mantra. But then afterward, I saw these guys in orange with these plates of huge prasadam, what is all that about, And then I was just eating raw food, so I go down, I can't eat that, can't eat that, can't eat that. So they finally said, well, why did you too? I'm macrobiotic, yeah. That was So finally they prevailed upon me, just try this little halva, And I was also in, I would do this raw food, but then I would sometimes break it, so, okay, same thing. So we joined at the same time in the same place, in same city. He also went to the same yoga studio as I did. There's a certain connection there. Yeah. So anyway, I tried the halva. What can I say? Love at first sight, at first taste, Oh God, it was such a. All right, give me something to take home, So I had these half-gallon, empty milk containers. All right, that was supposed to last a week. It lasted about 2 days, before long I was having halva. But I wasn't living in the temple, so it wasn't. So when I moved into the temple, there was much more opportunity for that. For eating more than you could hold. And I remember so many Sunday feasts. I was mad for ladus also, And sometimes they make ladus for the Sunday feast, and a lot of the guests wouldn't eat everything on the plate. And we had learned, day one, prasadam doesn't become contaminated, Okay, so I would gather all the ladus that the guests hadn't eaten, and I go up to the bunk, and then after I'd lie back, I could hardly breathe. Never again, never again. That's the last time. Till next Sunday, So I was living like that. So you have to eventually get control of that, to really make any advancement again. So after some time, I got. So I can't go through. We're running out of time, but there are do's and don'ts in Krishna consciousness also, which you have to follow in order to develop determination and in order to really get the higher taste and keep the higher taste. And in that way maintain your vairagya. Because really the higher taste of Krishna consciousness will undercut and destroy the lower taste. That's the big thing. And if you can sustain that, then you can become fixed in devotion, you know. So that's why the nectar of instruction is very important, and all these instructions. The knowledge that you have can strengthen your intelligence so you can control the lower self. That's in the 3rd chapter. And that's you know, an important advantage that we have. We get the higher taste immediately with the chanting, and you're floating along, but how to sustain it? Well, then you need knowledge, and you need, you know, serious practice and discipline. So it's not everybody that can do it, but a lot of people can do it. Whereas for the other thing, for the Ashtanga Yoga, practically no one can do it. You know, unless you're born in India at the feet of the Himalayas, whatever. All right, we have to adjourn because this curtain's going to open in 3 minutes. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Yeah, what? We don't have time? Yeah, then Parashakti, she could expect me to blow that conch.